and I want to start off by introducing Vasily. Vasily came across my desk probably, 2, 3 years ago. In my mind, Vasily is the person who invented tokenomic mechanisms and value capture. So Vasily has been in this space, I don't, maybe 5, 6 years now, maybe older, longer than that. It's something I want to ask you about, is how you got into crypto. But Vasily has created an entire framework for tokenomic mechanisms or value capture mechanisms, ways that tokens are used in a protocol. And so I want to open it up to Vasily to introduce himself and say that it's a great honor to have you in the Twitter space. And we're really excited to asking you all the questions that we get today.
Yep, Nate, thank you for this introduction and so for this kind words. So I'm always enjoying chatting with you. You produce a lot of good content. So, and I think that if we will make like a good collaboration and share knowledge, it will provide even more impact to the community here and to educational part of it. So I joined crypto quite a long time ago in 2013. It was more than like a fun, and then I followed by the mining, trading, all this common stuff in crypto when you're new in the space. So, but in 2017 I decided to pivot, my pathway to the career to the crypto entirely. So like go the full time to the crypto. So in 2018 I met Angela. I met some other guys from a rising token engineering community. It was something like quite small and boiling up. So and I was deeply engaged in DeFi that day. So analyzed projects, worked on some projects in DeFi in autumn 2018. So it was pretty exciting other days because the majority of protocols, they were like on the initial MVP stage, like Uniswap V1, like Compound, and MakerDAO was also working, but it was not something that everybody uses. So I saw how all of this grow up from scratch. So, and also I saw a lot of tokens. I mean, these all shitty ICOs and stuff that were in the space at that time. And always I had one question: okay, the ICO made a token. Why they made a token? Why it's valuable? Why someone need to buy it besides all those speculation reasons? So, and I started to see tokens, successful ones. They were quite narrow amount of them, of course, like maybe like 10% of all tokens or even lower. So the majority of tokens were just without any purpose and without any real value and utility. So, and over years I saw these similarities in patterns design and like how tokens work, how they capture value. So started to dig into this, and I found a lot of stuff there, and started to try to make some system from it, to just something to understand how we can for example, we have a new token and we want to understand how it works. Can we make some analogy to some existing tokens on the market and see what are basically the value capturing origins there? What is like under the hood? What is the root of the value captured for a token? So this was my question. I asked it myself a lot of times and a lot of people around in the community, and almost nobody knows. So people discussed mainly token distribution, token allocations, what should be the vesting period, etc. So, but it makes no sense in the demand side, as we now call it, because before nobody called this demand side. I mean, a few years ago, as I know. So so slowly but surely I came up with the classification, and the token engineering community helped me a lot with that. They pushed me to finally publish something, to do an article, and to compose these ideas and all this brainstorming and discussions in the community to something really that you can read and you can explore. So in 2021 I published the first Substack post on it, with all the ideas, with all the stuff behind, and with all the rationale behind why can we make some classification here, why we can make a limited set of resources of value and compose them to some mechanisms on the examples of some well-known tokens like Compound and some other ones. So, and lately I finalized it into the paper, and also I'm applying it to the different projects for the last 2 years, I think, all these theory that I developed. So, and this summer, when I saw that the cryptoeconomic systems applications are open, so I thought, okay, I can finally wrap it up into some, solid material, some academic grade paper. I consult with a lot of people in the space, like about what they think before I started to do something with the submission, because it's very serious for me to submit a paper. I'm a PhD with an academic background in material science and chemistry before, so I know what it is to submit papers, and you need to to be 100% like know what you're doing and do it in a good way. So finally, I made this paper, I submitted it, and went to the stock engineering bear camp, shared the theory to the more wider community than Angela, Sam, Nam, and some other guys in the room, and it got a great response. So and now I'm so excited to share it more, and develop some new practical approaches on top of that. So I will also share them later in this IMA, I think, how we can use the theory in practice. Yeah, but so the general idea behind all of this is that if we have a token and we want to understand the demand side of it, and I think that the demand side is very important, and it's basically the core part of the token model. It's what utility it has and what you can do with the token and what value you can derive as a token holder. So we need to understand the origins of value, like the elementary economic reasons why this token is valuable and how it captures value from the ecosystem, how it gets value from the combination of agents and so on. So this is the like a foundation of the whole idea, and the idea that we have three levels of abstraction here. We have an origins of value, these elementary economic units, like protons, electrons in some atoms, right? So also have value capturing mechanisms that are composed of these origins of value. So the mechanism is a combination of one or more origins of value, and the third level is a value capturing implementation pattern, so the particular code implementations of the mechanism. Because even if you, for example, discussing the governance, there can be different patterns to implement the governance, right? And at the same time, we have the same origins of value. We have the same value capturing mechanism even, but we have different code base, we have different nuances in it, and it can work differently. So this is why we have also value capturing implementation patterns, because the majority of people, even if they make some classification for tokens, they start to thinking only about the general purposes, not about how it's implemented, how it really works, and how people use it. So yeah, so this is, I think, the very brief introduction. Of course, probably a lot of questions arises, and I will be happy to answer them.
That's incredible. So you've created a framework for using tokenomic mechanisms, or value capture mechanisms, as I think you call them. And it's analogous to your work in chemistry, which is that you've got atoms, and then you've got molecules, and then you've got compounds, I guess, or I guess you would have atoms, molecules, compounds. You said there's three layers. And so I'm, as a non-chemist, I'm understanding how those might fit together. And the way you've described them is there's ways a token can be used at the base layer, and then you've got ways that tokens can be used maybe together at a higher level. And so I'm curious about that. And we also have an audience question that I want to give attention to that I think plays into this really well, where Ajay asked, what value capture mechanisms have you seen work most effectively in infrastructure projects? I think that would give the audience a good example of the kind of thing you're talking about, and then we can go into some more follow-up questions.
Yep. So for the Web3 infrastructure project, so when we're talking about the infrastructure, we are referring to some network of nodes, right, that do something for them.
And you might still be on mute, Vasily.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry, can you hear me now? I don't understand. Hello? Guys, can you hear me?
I'm not sure if I'm not hearing or if it's not coming through. If we can get an audience reaction, maybe a purple heart if you're hearing Vasily, and maybe a thumbs down if you're not. That would be helpful for us in this Twitter space.
Yeah, sorry guys. Can you hear me now? Hello? Yeah.
And maybe a clap if you're hearing me.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you, man.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead, Vasily. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'll figure out this on the back end.
Not a big problem. So you can hear me now clearly, and it's all okay, right? Yeah. AJ said that it's true. So hopefully it's really true. So at the time, that my mic works finally. So yeah, if you're talking about the infrastructure project, so what we are referring to particularly, so we are referring to some network of nodes that makes some work for the end users of the network, right? So for example, we have a Filecoin, and the Filecoin, Filecoin node store your files, and you as a customer need this file storage to be reliable, robust, and without any issues. Or for example, we have the decentralized VPN, so we have a VPN nodes, and users can get VPN services from these nodes, right? So we are talking about this particular case because the Web3 infrastructure, it's too wide term to discuss in general. So am I correct here? So who asked the question? I just need to get some confirmation that I'm correct in this, in this discussion. Guys, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So if you're talking about these kind of projects that I mentioned, so because for any token and for any value capturing decomposition, we need to understand the system first. So what is the system we are discussing? So if we're discussing a system that we have network of nodes that do some service for the end user. So for example, it can be decentralized VPN, decentralized RPC, decentralized file storage, or maybe some automation networks or something like that. Then we have well-known work token, value capturing mechanism. So the term work token wasn't implemented by me, so it's like a well-known definition of some kind of a token where a node stakes token as a skin in the game, as a security deposit to. Sorry? Yeah, the node stakes token as a skin in the game or security deposit, which ensures its honest behavior. And if node performs all actions honestly, for example, honestly store files or honestly provide you the VPN service or something like that, the node receives some payment from the end customer of the network. And at the same time, if node behaved dishonestly, for example, the node got some files for the storage, but the files are really not stored at all, and on the request you cannot access these files, for example. So it's like malicious behavior, dishonest behavior, because you have an agreement. Agreement based on the code that if you provide files and pay for the storage, the node will store these files. So, and if node behave dishonestly, she will be slashed. The node will be slashed, by some other node or by any other cryptographic mechanism implemented. So, and will lose the stake partly or entirely. So, this mechanism is well known as a work token. So it has 3 origins of value. It has a future cash flow, so the cash flow that users are paid to the node. It has a conditional action, original value. The conditional action is particularly that node should do something and spend time and resources on that. For example, if you need to store files, you need to have the SSD, you need to have internet connection and electricity for that. So it's a conditional action. You need to make this action and store files. And the third original value here is a risk exposure. So you are exposed to risk to be slashed, right? So your token value capture mechanism, which is token is based on, has 3 particular pieces: future cash flow, conditional action, and the risk exposure. And all these 3 pieces are interconnected between each other, because you cannot get future cash flow without doing the conditional action. And at the same time, if you wouldn't do the conditional action, you will get this slashing, or the risk exposure will be, so the risk will be realized and you wouldn't get a cash flow. So that's it. This is a very simple one, and this is the most popular token model for the Web3 infrastructure projects. As I said before, it's widely known as a work token model. There are different implementations of this model, of course, with different staking requirements, with different waiting functions for selecting a node for making some particular job when the request comes from the customers, of course. So there are some various implementation forms of it, but the general idea is very simple. There is something that node should do, or conditional action. There is a cash flow that users pay to the network, and there is a risk exposure that network is carrying, this risk exposure, and in case of some misbehavior, the node will be slashed and the part of the stake will be taken as a penalty. I even mentioned this very, in big details in my paper, and I can make a screenshot and share it in comments if you are interested in this particular part right now. So it's quite like well-known thing.
That's great. Thanks, Vasily. I caught most of that. Just got through the audio troubles, but that's an interesting example for infrastructure projects. I think seems like that type of protocol with the work token is using maybe several different value capture mechanisms to accrue value to the token.
So to be like entirely correct, these three value capturing mechanism. Sorry, there are three orders of value that compose one value capturing mechanism. But we also need to know that the future cash flow is like a positive side of the utility for the token holder. So you lock your tokens in the node, you receive the cash flow from users. So basically, you receive some particular value from the users. But the conditional action is your expense, right? So you need to have a server, you need to have an SSD, you need to have an internet connection, pay for all of that. Be sure that you have good uptime, because if you wouldn't have a good uptime, your node will be offline. Once the request for the file checking will come to you, you will be slashed. So not all orders of value are positive for the utility function. So in my theory, we have a utility function. The utility function is composed of two different parts. So one part is a positive part. So it's a part where token provides some value to the holder, to the user, and there is also a negative part. The negative part is expenses or risks that the token holder carries. So in this conditional action, and the risk exposure is particularly this negative part of the value function. So I shared in the comments of this space the screenshots from the paper that is upcoming paper. So with this particular point about the work token. So, and I also will share the part with the utility value function. So that is also related to the, or I can even share it from my presentation. It's quite a good slide there. So I will do it right now to have it all in the comments under the under our IMA.
Sure. Yeah, and that's interesting. I love that you distinguish the positive and negative aspects of utility and point out that users are going to incur some kind of costs by holding or using the token in a lot of cases. I think that's one of those things that's underappreciated in tokenomics. And one way that we've been seeing it lately is the overlooking of the risks of restaking or rehypothecation. I know some people have been commenting on that and the tweets that we've been putting out. I'm sure it's something that you've been thinking of. And I think it speaks to sort of like the supply side and demand side of tokenomics and a little bit of the difference between that. And I'm seeing a little bit of overlap there. I don't think it's a one-to-one. I think what you've described with the positive and negative utility is a different but analogous distinction between two aspects that helps people think more clearly about tokenomics in general.
Yep.
I wanted to see if we could go back a bit. Maybe we jumped right into the specifics of how to implement your framework, but I was wondering if you could speak to the audience at a higher level on like how you think of supply side versus demand side in tokenomics.
Yep. So yeah, we have two sides. Obviously, we have supply side and demand side. So when we talk about the supply side, we need to consider it as a selling side. So it means that tokens are distributed to the users, like various mechanisms. For example, we had some mining process or liquidity mining or rewards, as they're commonly known, or airdrop, something like that. We have some investors. We have all this all the parties that receive tokens based on some reasons. It can be money or investments. It can be some contribution to the protocol. It can be some liquidity provision or some other actions that considered as a positive ones, and protocol rewards users for these actions. But all of this is supply side. So all these tokens can go to the market and then can be sold. Of course, the price and the value are entirely different things, but anyway, we need to discuss everything because the open market exists for any token, right? So all the supply side, we can see it as a selling orders on the exchange. And for the demand side is the opposite thing. It's like the reason why users should buy a token and hold the token and use the token in a proper way. So when I say they use the token in a proper way, I define it as a value. Sorry, I define it as a utility activated form. So for example, you have Ethereum, but to have it in utility activated form, you need to deposit it to the validator and stake it and participate in the consensus, or you need to pay it for gas. But when you hold Ethereum on the wallet, it's not Ethereum in value activated form. You don't receive any value from Ethereum while you just hold it on the wallet. So this is a simple example. Or for example, in this like nodes and work token example, it's the same. If you stake your token into the node and run a node, you activate the value capture. If you just hold your token on your wallet and do nothing, you don't activate the value capture. So, and all these, reasons that motivate users to buy a token and use it in a proper way are like demand side factors. So, for example, why would someone buy Ethereum and use it, right? So the main demand factor is that you can deposit to the validator, you can receive the validator income from the from the network, also the MIV and all other income streams on top of that. So you basically receive the future cash flow in exchange of your validator operations. So that's it. So your main motivation here is to get the income from the network. Also, you have maybe non-monetary motivation that if you will secure the network will thrive more and it will be more secure. But of course, it's not all people have this motivation. And the third is that if you have the majority of Ethereum users, of course, have a speculative intentions that that in the future Ethereum will be much more bigger, much more valuable, and they will get more money from the token, but it's not related to its utility. So it's just an expectations. Or for example, for the node business is the same. So for example, you want to run a bridge, the validator of the bridge, and you buy tokens of these bridge validators. You log them into the into the node, and you aim to get some income from this bridge transfers because fees charged all the time when someone uses the bridge. So this is the mainly the demand factors here. So, or for example, if you're talking about the access tokens, so the access is one of the origins of value. It provides you access to something or some service or the product without any other additional action. So you need to have a token on your balance. For example, for the crypto.com, they have a token, and to get some utility from the card, like get a better card or better services, they allow lower fees, bigger cashbacks. You need to get some tokens, log them. When you're logging, you enable this risk exposure because you cannot take tokens out for a while, right? So you enable the utility of getting the crypto.com card, and this is the main driver for your demand because you want to get this card. Or for example, you want to participate in Curve governance and earn the fees from the protocol fee distribution, right? And earn bribes from the bribe market, which is built on top of Curve. So this is and also boost your liquidity provider's position, right? So this is your intentions why people buy Curve, lock it for 4 years, and and use Curve. So all the reasons that are driving people to buy tokens somewhere and use them in a proper way as designed by the protocol design is the demand factor. Or for example, if you get tokens for free, you're not selling them, because always when someone gets a token from supply side, so you're, for example, you're providing the liquidity to some DeFi protocol and you're mining some tokens. So you get incentives, and this is purely supply side thing, right? So you're getting tokens in exchange for some actions that are making the protocol better. For example, more liquidity for DEXs, making the DEX more attractive for traders, right? So, but when you got this token to your wallet, when you claimed it from the rewards, you have two options always. You can sell it and get instant profits from it as a rational economic agent, or you can use this token in a proper way in a protocol as it was designed, right? For example, stake it and participate in governance like in Curve model or something like that. So, and the question is, are these demand side factors enough for you as an ordinary user to not selling your token and to use it in a proper way and use it as it according to its utility? So this is the question. And when and the biggest problem of projects, like in my opinion, is that they make very good calculation for the supply side for the whole liquidity mining models, but they barely care about the demand side, and they end with a lot of users receiving a lot of tokens from liquidity mining and any other distribution mechanics that don't know what to do with the token, that don't understand how, and it's really not valuable in the majority of cases. So this is why selling it, and it's going to the death spiral, as a lot of different projects died in this bearish market. And even if users bought the token, they thinking only about the speculation, because they don't see any value capturing for using the token in a proper way, right? So they say, okay, we will take it to the governance. Governance is not valuable. Okay, I will just hold it on a wallet. If token will occasionally grow, I will sell it and get some profits, not from the token's utility purely, but from the market. So, and yeah, so when someone decides, I think to wrap it up, the main idea behind understanding the supply and demand is as follows. If you're making some supply side, you need to understand how this supply side is growing the protocol in a proper way, accounting it as a marketing expenses. And you need to make a demand size strong enough to people to use tokens in a proper way and not selling them all the time. And you need to balance the supply and demand factors in your protocol. Or if you wouldn't do it, your protocol will be doomed slowly but surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit on a lot
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
there. I completely agree with you on all counts, all points. People, one thing you pointed out was projects think that they're going to get a lot of users by giving away tokens, and that's not always the case. And it's definitely not going to be the case if they don't have any utility to their token, if they don't have token utility and these value capturing mechanisms that you've created and described built in. And I think a lot of protocols maybe mistakenly use and think governance is a reason that users would want to use the token. But when you think about it, as you've pointed out, it's people don't really want to pay for governance. And if they do, then you have to question what their motivations are. If there's no token utility, if there's no value capture mechanism built into the protocol, then a user paying for governance is only going to be paying in order to abuse the protocol or change it in ways that helps them. So these are some great points that you're bringing up related to supply side tokenomics and the difference between supply side and demand side. I'm curious about what your favorite supply side mechanisms are and maybe what your favorite demand side mechanisms are. And those could be like over time or at this point, but supply side being ways that the token might have its supply reduced, and then demand side being what you've described as the ways tokens are used that cause them to accrue value.
Yeah, so I think I'm more deep into the demand side, of course, but for the supply side, I really like so I think the Bitcoin has a quite good supply side because it's very programmable, so all the future supply going to the market, going to the users all the time. So I think it's perfect because in contrast to that, a lot of different projects, they've changed that, like the supply side factors all the time. So they make some liquidity mining programs. Like today they do this reward for some pool, tomorrow they change it, they increase it, then they decrease it. So they mess with it a lot, and it's changing all the time and not predictable at all. And you never know, what will be tomorrow. So I think for the supply side, it's very good when it's really predictable for the community and for users and for everybody. So I think this is the first point. The predictability is really good in my opinion. So the second thing I think is talking about the all these investors and all the free tokens. I mean, when I say free tokens, I'm not talking about that somebody bought them or not bought them for the real money. I'm talking about that, for example, if there's some layer one and people they launch nodes, they contribute to the consensus, to the security, so they get tokens for their work, right? For the work of these nodes. It's not like work token; it's different mechanism, but. And this can be also a separate point for discussion why work token and tokens for the consensus of layer ones are different in my point of view. But I think we will discuss maybe later. So when there are a lot of tokens that are got by someone who didn't do anything for the protocol in its operation, of course, there's development, like preliminary development, etc. It's also available, but when some founder of some project receives 30% of the tokens, it's not good, or like a team receives 30% of the tokens, it's not good because it's quite big, supply, and sometimes it's not controlled at all, and the demand factors are not good enough for even for the team to not sell them. So I think that like the programmable supply side is good, and of course something can change by by some governance, but it also shouldn't be changed so often. And also I think that protocols probably should like bond the supply side somehow to the metrics of the protocol. So this could be very good because sometimes it goes to the like small DeFi protocol with low liquidity, mines a lot of tokens because there's a block like a reward per Ethereum block built in, and it's a lot of supply, no demand, and it's go to death. So these are my considerations on the supply side. There are a lot of works on that. You invested X, part of the total token supply into the user acquisition, for example, for all these airdrops of rollups, etc. And what you got finally as a user base. So all this research are quite interesting, of course, but mainly they show that the user acquisition cost is incredibly high, and the majority of tokens are going to the airdrop hunters. So this is what I saw on the market, on Twitter and all these projects. Of course, there are probably some good options to do that, but for me, the programmable supply side is good. So for the demand side, I think that Ethereum has quite good demand side, and it's reflected in the share of the staked Ethereum in the protocol, and that it's really valuable for users to stake Ethereum and stake a lot. So I think that like curve model is not bad. A lot of people blame curve model for for the fact that the governance was focused on bribes and not of voting for pools that are really valuable for the protocol and for its trading volumes, etc. But talking about 2020 and this like DeFi summer when a lot of protocols didn't have tokens at all, I think Curve made a great job and make it really interesting. So for the MakerDAO, I think that they have a lack of something like not a Tokenomics purely, but some of the some token lock and some incentives for participation in governance. Because what Curve did, they provide real incentives of participation in governance, sharing the protocol fee, at least. And in the future, when the bribe market arises and this all Curve wars narrative, it was the first example of the governance that was monetized directly by governance participants. And this is how they.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think Curve is probably one of the most interesting protocols to study from a tokenomics perspective because there was so much debate around whether VE tokenomics were a good thing and whether Curve's implementation was a good thing. And you've got two mechanisms that you use to describe Curve in the periodic table of tokenomic mechanisms. For anyone listening, check out Vasily's profile. He's got it in his cover photo, this periodic table of mechanisms for accruing value to a token. And one of those is governance, another is meta governance, which I think describes the Curve token in this particular.
No, it's not correct. So the meta governance. So there is a meta. I named it as a meta mechanism. So meta mechanism. So let's return a little bit back. So mechanism is like a structure where there are several origins of value interacting with each other somehow, right? So, for example, for work token, we have three of them. As I said before, it's future cash flow, conditional action, and risk exposure. But what if, so we can have even all 8 mechanisms in one, all 8 origins of value in one mechanism. So there are 255 different mechanisms possible based on just on the combinatorics of these 8 origins of value. But what if you will have a token that has several value capture mechanisms, for example, several governance mechanisms, right? So you have governance, how it can happen. So just imagine you have a contract and there are some tokens in the balance of this contract, for example, Compound, Uni. Let's make this two of them. You have a contract, and on this contract you have some balance of Compound and some balance of Uni. And at the same time, you issue a new token that decides how these tokens on the contract will vote in the next voting. So token holders of this new token X, let's name it X, when Compound voting occurs, they make their own voting how this stake that is under control of this contract will vote. When Uni token voting occurs, they decide how Uni token, all the stake will vote, right? So at this new token X, it has it gets value captured from the compound governance, right, and from unique governance. So it basically has because the compound has only one original value in its mechanism, its governance, right? And unique has also only one mechanism in its token. It's also governance. They both have a conditional action that you need to need a vote, but it's not so significant because this conditional action is very, very simple, right? It's like from academic point of view, it also occurs. So the compound has third and eight, or just so value third is governance, eight is conditional action. But we all understand the conditional action is very simple to do and not cost anything for you. So, and finally, the users and holders of this token X, when they vote for decision making for this stake of compound of Uni and for Uni, so they get value from these both protocols. So they have 2 times this governance original value, one coming from compound and one coming from Uni. And such types of mechanisms, I call them the meta mechanism. Or for example, you have a contract where you have, I don't know, let's get some dividend tokens to the play. So for example, the MakerDAO token, it's MKR, right? It has an indirect dividends. And for example, liquidity token, LQTE token, it's a purely dividend token, as I name it. So it's so the liquidity token has only one original value. It's a future cash flow, right? They even don't have a governance right. And if you have a contract where you hold 2 tokens that both have a dividends, no matter it's direct form like liquidity, so you get real, LUSD dividends, or you getting it's in Maker based on indirect burn of the rest of the supply when the fees are paid to the protocol, you acquire value from these both protocols to your new token that is, control this like basket of 2 tokens. So, and all these type of patterns all these type of mechanisms where we have several similar origins of value coming from other underlying tokens, I named as a meta pattern. That's it. So this is how the meta pattern comes, to the game.
I see. So the meta comes from the combination of these mechanisms in the underlying
yes
patterns.
So for example, so let me share the the 10 most used value capturing mechanisms on the market, so the most popular ones. I will share them into the where is this comments. Yeah, I will share them into the comment right now. And since each mechanism is a combination of different origins, what if you will combine several identical origins? For example, 3 times 3, 3, 3, for example, or something like that. So it will be a meta pattern finally. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, if you share that into the comments, I think that would be helpful for our listeners. And we have another audience question. And then after that, if we have any more, if anyone has another question, please post it in the comments. We have another audience question that I think segues from previous questions, which is, how do value capture mechanisms evolve based on the stage of a project? Can you answer that, Vasily?
Yep. So the mechanism evolves. So since the mechanism is composed of the origins of value, we need to track them. So we need to see if token has this original value at this time period. For example, some projects, they're launching a project without a token, right? After that, after a while, when they get some user base, they make an airdrop for a token, like Arbitrum and Optimism. They made an airdrops for active users of the rollup, right? But on the moment of this airdrop, the ARB token and OP token has only the governance function. So a lot of people, like new people in crypto sometimes think that ARB, for example, is a native token for paying for gas in Arbitrum. It's of course not correct, because the Ethereum is token for paying for gas in Arbitrum. And the ARB token has the only governance function there at this moment. But if we will dig into how rollups work, we know that there is a sequencer, right, that posts the state of the rollup on the Ethereum mainnet. And now these rollups, like Arbitrum, like Optimism, like ZK Sync, they consume significant share of the block space in Ethereum, right? So, and these sequencers are centralized at this moment. But in the future, like market expects, and I expect personally, that they will be decentralized sequencers. So it will be, so this part of the rollup, system will be decentralized in the future, and in that time, the ARP token will get some, additional original value based on the staking in the node of the sequencer. So I don't know particularly how the sequencers will be decentralized and how it will work in details, but it's evident that they will use ARP token as a skin in the game for staking, for preventing malicious behavior of these sequencer nodes. So this is like how I see it. So, and this example shows us how project starts, for example, with only the governance original value and nothing else. And after that, it adds the conditional action, risk exposure, and the future cash flow. So this is a good example, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Arbitrum is a great example of that because they have some future utility planned in their roadmap. I use the example of Uniswap often, of a project that doesn't have very much future utility planned in their roadmap, or at least is putting off the introduction of the value capture mechanism of fees. What do you think about protocols' decisions to introduce tokens later broadly? Like, how would you think about that? And what advice could you give to protocols maybe that are thinking about issuing a governance token and then capturing some value later?
I think it's a good approach because so any protocol, especially a new one, is it's a new system, and you need to see how it will behave, how users will interact with it, right? And probably in the future you will see a new need for a token functions there. So for example, we will go back in time, and I remember the Yearn Finance and Wi-Fi token, which is widely known. So they changed the origins of value or token design several times. So it was a pure governance token, as it was pointed by Andrea Cronier. It was worthless governance token without any real utility, as he said. It's just something from the Twitter. But later then made some fee distribution to it, so you can deposit Wi-Fi in the contract. I'm talking about the period of autumn 2020, and get some protocol fee sharing, so get real yield on top of your staked Wi-Fi. But in the future they decided to go out of this design and make it back without any fee distribution. So because maybe of the legal reasons, maybe of something else, I don't know, because I wasn't involved in the decision making. I just as a community member, I saw how this was happening. So I think that the idea of fitting the token design according to the the environment around, so to the legal environment, to the system environment, is quite important. So because you can implement new functions, you can implement something new in the protocol that will require token usage there. So, and you never can predict what will happen tomorrow. So let's remember Ethereum. So Ethereum was started as a proof of work blockchain, right? So the only utility of a token for a long time was value transfer, because you can use Ethereum for transferring value from the end users of the network to the miners, right? So you pay for the transactions in Ethereum. Of course, there's a gas auction mechanism and all this kind of stuff under the hood for this, for block space pricing. But anyway, if you will, see it straight, the only function of the token was paying the gas fees and transfer value from end user to the miner that creates a block, and nothing more. You cannot mine any Ethereum if you have Ethereum, right? To mine Ethereum, you need to buy GPUs, set up mining farms, etc. But in the future, Ethereum moved to the POS, and now we have the token with future cash flow, risk exposure, and conditional action or participation in consensus. So this is how the token design was changed for the one of the biggest and most important projects on the market. And besides they also added the mint and burn mechanism, when all users burn the fees that they pay to the miners, to the validators, as it define it now, and the network pays to the validators itself from issuing the block reward, and only the tips can be transferred to the validators from the user. So, and this is like the minor part of all gas fees paid. So they made a lot of improvements in token design based on their experience, based on the how the network evolution. So, and this was a quite good decision, because when they started in mainnet in 2015, the proof of work with the with native token that is used only for gas was quite a good decision because the proof of stake wasn't ready. Of course, it's very complicated technology, and the proof of work and this gas mechanism was the only solution for launching the network and start building products. But in the future, when they got experience, got knowledge, spent years for development, and found out that they can finally deploy POS in the future, they also find out that they can balance the supply and demand side. So this essential question that we discussed before. So the EIP 1559 with this burn and mint mechanics is essentially the option and a built-in mechanism for balancing the supply and demand side. And now the supply is less. It's less over time, right? So the total supply of Ethereum decreases, and this deflationary. It's more attractive for people to be a validator, because the main idea here, besides the decreasing the supply and the selling pressure, is that if you are a user, you spend your Ethereum, you spend it all the time. But if you're a validator, you're not only not spending your Ethereum, you're not burning it, you also grow your share in the network. So it's extremely attractive to be a validator now, because you're getting more Ethereum in absolute terms. So if you stake Ethereum, you get more and more of it based on the block reward and the MAV and all other income sources that you can get from the network. And also other Ethereum is burned because users pay for the transactions and burn Ethereum continuously. So your stake grows, and it's very attractive to be a validator. So changing this token design, I think they improved a lot security of the network, even not talking about the energy consumption and all these technical things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think Ethereum is a really interesting case to look at tokenomics because it's changed over time, right? It was proof of work before, now it's proof of stake. So there's this staking mechanism. And I agree with you that proof of work was an effective distribution mechanism. I think Bitcoiners discount that proof of work is primarily a distribution mechanism. It is a consensus mechanism, but there were other consensus mechanisms available to Satoshi if he had wanted to include them. But proof of work was a way to get the widest distribution possible in an equitable way and maintain the security of the network at the same time. And Ethereum has several different mechanisms for capturing value. Like you've described, it's got now the staking mechanism. It has EIP 1559, which is I would call a supply side, a burn mechanism. So it's affecting the supply, decreasing the supply rather than increasing the demand. And then you have the use of Ethereum for fees. So it's a medium of exchange, right? So it's got each of these mechanisms and combines them to holistically synthesize and align the interests and the incentives of all of the participants in the Ethereum protocol. I think it's a great example and a great tokenomics case study of a way to effectively change the value capture of a network or of a token. And so I think we've got maybe 10 minutes left in this space. If anyone who's just joined has a question, please comment it below and we'll try to answer that, or you could request the speaker, request the mic, and we could do it that way. Another question I have, Vasily, for you as a sort of follow-up is what does effective governance look like to you? And maybe talk about like what the role of governance is for applications, like dApps, decentralized applications, versus what governance looks like for an L1, and how you think about that.
Yep. So I think that the most important thing in governance is what is government, finally, because people implement governance in projects and there is nothing to govern. So, and I think that all the governance, so in my definition, the governance original value. So the value in this original value, the value comes from the opportunity to manage the limited resources of the network, of the protocol, of decentralized application, whatever it is. So the key is the management of limited resources, right? So, but when you manage some resources, why do you do it? You do it to maximize some metrics, right? So, for example, if you are managing the capital, I'm not talking about DAO treasures. I'm just talking about a personal case of investors, right? When you're managing your capital, your main goal, if you're a rational investor, is to maximize your return on the capital. I'm not talking about all other like not monetary incentives that you want to make more better. It's of course also is in play, but in general, like you want to get more than you invested, you get to get some return on the capital. So your main metric to maximize is the amount of the capital that you have under the operations, right? So for any protocol, it's essential to understand the metric, what governance finally should maximize. For example, in the case of Curve, the governance, like theoretically, should maximize the liquidity on most like demanded tokens by the market, and therefore maximize uh, the trading volume, and finally maximize the protocol fee that is collected as a 50% of the trading fee from all this trading volume. So finally, the curve governance should maximize the amount of the protocol fee distributed to the VCRV token holders. In case of MakerDAO, for example, the governance should provide such interest rates to the collaterals to have the maximum DAI issued according to these market conditions. I mean, theoretically, right? So any protocol should maximize some metric using the governance mechanism. For example, for the DeFi protocols, it's mainly the TVA, right? Because it's like the main metric in DeFi. For some other protocols, it can be something else, but the efficient governance starts with the metric that is maximized by the governance. It starts with the main goal, and all other proposals or all these votings are finally focused on growing this metric. It can be also amount of users, it can be amount of nodes, for example, like in Ethereum, or amount of the staked ETH, for example. It's also can be a metric that is evidently very good and very thriving for the system. So yeah, so talking about the governance, I think that the founders of the projects, they need to think what metrics should be maximized by the governance and how to like define the governance framework to maximize this metric. For example, a lot of projects, they are doing governance in relation to the distribution of the rewards to the pools, to lendings, markets, to something, what is inside the protocol. And the question is, okay, how to distribute the rewards in the most efficient way to grow the liquidity, to grow the amount of user base, trading or lending or whatever the protocol does. So yeah, I think this is the answer, the metric. You need to define the metric, first of all, and understand why this metric, why you want to maximize exactly this metric or maybe two of them. And second, you need to understand how to do it. So for example, in DeFi protocols, the approach for maximizing TVL metric is to efficiently offer the rewards. And because the DeFi is competitive space, right? There are a lot of possibilities to deposit your stable coins or your Ethereum or some other assets that you have. So and protocols compete for the liquidity, right? So you need to build a governance for getting some efficient place in this competition to get some TVL. And this is in DeFi, it's based on the supply side, right? Because the rewards are main drivers to deposit something in the protocol. Of course, if you have something really unique features like Uniswap v3 at the date it was implemented, nobody has the Uniswap v3, right? When the Uniswap v3 was deployed, so it also can be a good option to maximize your TVL metric. But anyway, this Uniswap v3 also was coming via the proposal, as I remember. So this proposal also was talking directly. It was aimed to the maximizing the TVL metric. So yeah, so governance comes down to metrics and to the approach to how to get these metrics grow. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Is that you have to think about what metric you want to maximize and then how to capture value from that metric. And to your point, I think a lot of DeFi founders and protocol founders are not thinking about either of those questions, but when they're thinking about the first, they might be unaligned with the second. So protocols that are trying to maximize TVL are often doing it for optics because they want people to say, oh, wow, look at all the TVL in this protocol. Meanwhile, they're not being compensated for TVL. They're being paid with fees, which are proportional just to the use of the network. So their metric should be maximizing the use of the network, not necessarily the TVL in the network. And while they're correlated, they're not a one-to-one. So I think it's a really interesting and great way to break it down is asking first, what metric are you looking at? And second, how do you align your value capture and the use of tokenomic mechanisms with that metric? Yep. So this has been a fantastic space, and thank you for joining this. Thanks for everyone for coming on. Vasily, where can people find you if they'd like to reach out to you
I
for
think
further questions, and where can they find
I
your
think
work?
in Twitter it is the best way to find me, and I have the presentation with all this theory described with some examples with all this stuff published. So it's in the link is in the bio, so it's a bit.ly/token value. So you can find it in my biography on Twitter. So the link is there. I can also post it under the space to have more visibility for it. So it's like a GitHub link. You can go there. You can download the PDF file, and you will get everything you need from this file. And in the future, I hope it will happen soon. I plan to show some practical applications, because if you have these origins of value and value capture mechanisms understanding, after that we can dig into the on-chain data for already existing protocols like Curve, like Convex, like I don't know, like Balancer, and so on. And we can see how different origins of value really contribute to the token value. Because, for example, in Curve we have two main sources of value, right? We have future cash flow coming from the protocol fees, and we're having a governance value that can be monetized through the bribe market. So the Curve is quite a good example for digging into it, because the governance value is monetized. So it has some material representation in these bribes, right? So you can get some numbers from it at least, and not just speak about the governance in general form where is no material flow. So you can see the amount of yield that was got by token holders, by vote escrow token holders, who lock tokens for a long time from the protocol fees, and you can compare it from with the bribe income, and you will see the contribution of these two origins of value of the future cash flow and of the governance. And you can make some get more understanding what is under the hood of the protocol, how it really works, what value comes from, and you can get numbers for this value. And this is much broader approach than just theoretical classification that I propose. So this is the next step of my work. I'm working on this protocol comparison and on-chain data digging and finding the metrics. So this is the application. So every theory should have an application, and we have. So the most evident application of the theory is to get on-chain data for existing protocols and understand the to make a pie chart, right? So we have a CRV token. What share of value comes from the future cash flow? What share of value comes from the government, for example? And how these metrics are changing over time in the bull market and the bear market, etc.
Brilliant. We're looking forward to hearing more about that and seeing that, and we'll definitely be retweeting you when you publish that, and would like to be working with you on it in the future and potentially bring you on for another Twitter space. This has been fantastic. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all the listeners who have been with us this entire time, who would love to hear more about this and are looking forward to hearing more about your work, and we'll be reaching out to you in the future. So everybody go follow Vasily on Twitter and stay tuned for more of his work on tokenomic mechanisms, value capture, and mechanism design. This has been a great space. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll close it out here.
Yeah, thank you, Nate, for the invitation. It was a great space, and a lot of cool stuff coming here. So yeah, always appreciate this, and we're happy to join more spaces and doing some work together. If you have some ideas, please share them. Let's go.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, Vasily, and everybody else for joining. We'll catch you guys all later.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.